And that's what you've asked several times on this show. Like, what evidence would you accept? And I think that something that both of us would be interested in is, can we just start with any at all?
I mean, you think it's reasonable to believe that we evolved from a single cell organism.
This is a train wreck. This is a train wreck of a broken brain, a terribly broken brain. Your mind has been poisoned by religious concepts.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. Most of the content on my channel is supported by generous patrons, but made available for free to the entire world. If you support that, please consider adding your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates. This clip, however, is from one of the many programs that I do on YouTube on The Line. And if you liked it, feel free to visit, like, subscribe, and watch The Line Network live. Thank you.
David, pronouns they, them, is California. It wants to explain why the existence of a creator is logical. Hey, David, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Well, you heard the last call. Let's see if this is better.
Hopefully it is. So, yeah, I mean, I would love to discuss why the existence of a creator is logical.
Okay. What do you mean by is logical? Do you mean that it's the result of a logical argument supported by evidence such that it's rational?
Yeah, I mean that's the way we come to a conclusion, right? Is using
No. There are other things that are logical necessities. So, I mean, for example, I think I'm getting ready to release a video on describing what evidence for a proposition is and how it's different from facts merely consistent with a proposition. That'll be coming out probably next week. But there's other reasons to believe something other than a logical argument supported by evidence. There's if something can be demonstrated to be a logical necessity or even a practical necessity. So that's why I was asking.
Well, do you believe in the concept of absolute truth?
I don't believe that I have access to absolute truth. I have perhaps access to maximal truth, but I have no way to demonstrate because everything is conditioned on whether or not reason is actually reasonable.
Okay, so do you believe that we landed on the moon?
Yes.
Okay, well, there's others that don't believe that we landed on the moon. So either we landed on the moon or we didn't. There's absolute truth to that, right?
There is a truth. Whether or not it is absolute is a secondary question. I don't think you can have absolute certainty about anything. I don't think that is possible. It violates some principles of logic. But I believe that we landed on the moon. I also would say that I know that we landed on the moon. But knowledge doesn't require certainty. And so for the people who don't believe, they are simply wrong. They are inconsistent with the available evidence.
Okay, so again, just going back to the idea, I mean, it's either we landed on the moon or we didn't. Like, there is absolute truth there. Like,
there is an answer. Whether or not you have access to it is absolutely a separate question.
Okay, so just kind of continuing off of that. So again, I mean, I would define that as absolute truth, right? Like either something happened or it didn't.
That's ridiculous. No. David, whether or not something is true is separate from whether or not you can ever have a reasoned confidence that it's true, right?
You got to elaborate. You got me.
Okay. Either there is a rock shaped exactly like my head on a planet orbiting a star in another galaxy, or there's not. Those are the only two options, correct?
Or there's a third, that rock doesn't exist.
Jesus Christ, David.
That's the second option.
There are
either there
options.
is or there isn't.
There either is that rock or there isn't. And you said there's a third option.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah.
There isn't. Yeah, if you can't pay attention through like simple explanations of binaries that you're trying to use, this isn't going to go very well. So,
okay, go ahead. Continue.
Whether or not you or anyone else is ever able to demonstrate that that is true or that it is not true is a completely separate question, right?
Right.
Okay. Continue.
But we can't physically determine whether or not that rock exists, right? Would you agree to that?
No, I don't know whether or not we can determine it because I don't know what's possible as far as are we ever going to have access to a planet that we can explore and find that or not? You don't know what may or may not happen.
Okay, so I mean, at this point, we don't have access. Would you agree to that
At this
hypothetical rock
point,
you're
I do
talking
not
about?
have access to dig up other planets in other galaxies. Yes. What is the point?
So how would you come to a conclusion then whether
I
that rock
wouldn't.
exists?
I wouldn't.
So you
That's why
wouldn't
my
want to come to a
position.
conclusion.
I cannot come to a conclusion. My position is I do not know whether or not that thing exists.
Okay, so do you believe rationality exists?
Exists as a thing? No.
Well, so I
David,
mean, exists not as
David,
a thing, but as a
David,
concept. As a
David,
concept.
David, do you believe that that rock shaped like my head exists?
It's possible, right? I mean, I think it's very
How do you know
possible that it could. I mean, we could.
how do you know it's possible? What's the demonstration that it is possible for a rock shaped exactly like my head to exist on a planet in another galaxy?
Well, I mean, the fact that there's billions and billions of galaxies that we, know that are in existence in our universe, that it's very possible that there are all
No,
rocks
David,
that
David, I'm
exist.
asking you how you know that it's possible. It may not be the case that it's possible.
I just gave you my reasoning why I would
You
assume
gave
that it is possible.
you vomited forth some there's a lot of planets and that means it's possible. And I reject your assertion. That is not how you demonstrate that something is possible.
But you asked me a question and I'm answering. You said, "How do you
No,
think it's
you're not.
possible?"
You're
Like,
not answering. You're not answering. I asked you whether or not you believed it. And instead of answering that question, you said you believe it's possible. And then I pointed out you don't have reason to believe that it's possible, do you? And you tried to argue that you did have reason to believe it's possible, but in fact you do not. Are you
so.
going to get the
So,
existence
what
of
is
a
evidence for
creator?
you?
Are you going to get to the existence of a creator, or are we going to sit here and spend our
I,
weeks?
I mean, yeah, we've been going in a circle because I've been trying to, at least build up some kind of logical framework to get
I
to
don't
that
think you
point. But
understand
again,
logic. I don't think you understand logic or logical frameworks enough to do this. Because when I started off, you said the existence of a creator is logical. And when I asked you what you meant by that, it was like I was speaking a foreign language. And then when I asked you whether or not something is true, it was like I was speaking a foreign language. So here we are again. I'm going to take a step back and maybe you and Austin can figure out whether or not the existence of a creator is logical, because I'm clearly a stumbling block to you understanding anything.
no, not at all. And again,
No,
just
yes,
going back to
I'm
the
done.
okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, Matt, you come off as a mesotheist, which I don't know if you know what that definition is, but it's really just like the hatred of God, like that you wish so dearly in your heart that God doesn't exist, and that's how you honestly you
I'm
come off
sorry.
when I watch previous
Excuse me.
shows of
I'm
yours.
sorry, but I just asked you to defend your belief, and now you're just sitting here whining about me and what you want to talk about me. I'm not relevant to whether or not God exists, am I?
Well,
Is
I'm
your
just saying. I
argument,
mean, you
hang on,
stop with these.
David, is whether or not I hate the God concept relevant to whether or not God exists? Yes or no?
No, it's not. But
No, it's
it
not.
really
So
explains
shut
your.
the fuck up about it and have the conversation you said you were going to have, or I'm going to drop you like a fucking hot potato.
I mean, see, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you give no opportunity for people to speak, and then
You're
every
a
like
liar.
2
You're a
seconds you're
fucking
interrupting
liar,
me.
David. You're a fucking liar, David. I gave you multiple opportunities to speak. I asked you questions that
But
you
you've
are
interrupted me.
Yes, I did, because I'm not going to let you fucking keep derailing this. So this is your last fucking opportunity. Defend your claim that a creator exists or fuck off.
Okay, so I guess the logical argument for a creator is the origins of the universe. I mean, starting from that, I mean, we could even talk about evolution and us coming from a single cell organism into this complex multicellular organism, but I'll take it a step backwards. Going from the origins of the universe, you either got to accept the fact that the universe was always here or that creator was always here. I mean, would you agree to that concept?
No.
Why is that? What's the third option? I don't know. Well, that's a conversation stopper, right? I mean, we're here to have a conversation about these things.
No, we're here for you to demonstrate your claim. Can you do that or not?
What's wrong with I don't know. You're the one who's making the proposition here that there was a creator, that the construction of the universe points to evidence of, logically, in your words, of a creator. We're asking you to explain why.
I mean, so you can't test the idea of metaphysical or supernatural things, right? So I can't go in the lab and demonstrate whether a God exists or not, right? There's supernatural. It's supernatural. It's above the physical. So I can't empirically go in a lab and test these things. So that's why I'm saying we use our faculties, our ration, and use logical to come to a logical conclusion whether or not a God or a creator exists. That's
And
my
how
argument
are
here.
you
It's
and how are you doing that? Walk us through that. How are you using your faculties to ration and reason outside of the ability to test this, because it's supernatural, it exists outside of the natural realm of what can be tested in a lab? How are you using your faculties, observing the world around you, to come to a logical conclusion that intelligent design exists in the universe?
Yeah, exactly. It just goes back to the origins of the universe. And the origins of the universe are
I'm going to pause and interrupt here. My apologies to Austin. Austin asked you a very specific question. How did you do this? And your response, David, which shows that you're not listening or thinking, or that you're just a troll, was to go on and say, yeah, it goes back to the origin of the universe. So I'm going to interject with one question. David, what mechanism do you have that allows you to explore the origin of the universe?
what mechanism? My ration, our rationale.
That's not a
Well, let me ask you a
mechanism.
question.
That is
What
not a
does that mean?
That is not a mechanism to explore the origin of the universe. Sitting around saying you're going to think about it is not a method for exploring. You're like the people on the internet who think they did research because they read a fucking headline.
Okay, so what method would you find plausible? Because I guess there's different criteria here. So you tell me.
I'm not
What
aware
is a
of any
mechanism?
method. I'm not aware of any method that allows anyone to explore the origin of the universe. We are barred from proper investigation by the fact that we cannot go back further than the Planck time, even mathematically. That's where things start breaking down. You're the one asserting that you know enough about the origin of the universe to determine that it was caused by an intelligent agent, and we're asking you how.
So I mean, do you believe our current universe is finite?
It's expanding, David. That's what we know about it. It seems to
So
be getting bigger as it goes out and moving faster. And
but that's what I'm asking. Do you believe
that's
it's
how we
finite? Does it
calculate the
have
origin point too, is that everything's moving out from the origin point, and there's a math that you can do to reverse engineer the speed at which everything is moving out from that origin point. And that's how we did the math of how we know the age of the universe and its origin point. But we don't know what was before that. Again, like Matt said, we can't mathematically do it. We're asking you, you're the one who has a very specific claim here. We're not coming to you with any specific claim of like, we know exactly what caused the Big Bang. We know exactly why it happened, and we know exactly what it looked like, and we know when the next one's going to happen, and the next one after that. We're not making, and we know why it happens. We're not making any claims like that. You are. So we're asking you to explain to us, by sitting and thinking, using your ration, how do you come to the conclusion that it was created by an intelligent designer?
So I mean, evidence shows that our universe is finite in the sense that it either has an ending or it had a beginning. Either or, that means that our universe is finite. The question then it comes, what was before our universe? If this was finite and it was not always here, then what was before it, right? Another universe? You believe in the multiverse theory? Then what was the original universe, right? Either you believe that a God that was uncaused, a creator, an uncaused cause was always here, or you believe a universe was always here, and either or is fine. But just saying, I don't know, I mean, that's a conversation stopper. And I mean, I don't think this conversation is going to go anywhere if we just say, I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm saying we could use our logic and reasoning and try to deduce whether or not there is an uncaused cause that can be defined.
Right. So the problem, as I see it right now, David, is that you're requiring, in order for us to engage in the parameters that you want to engage with, you're requiring for us to take as firm of a stance as you do about the nature of existence and the nature of why there is something instead of not something. You're requiring that we have a firmly held belief that this is exactly what happened, and I know this is exactly what happened, and we take the position that we only know as much as we're able to observe and quantify scientifically, and that we understand that in that realm of what is observable and what we actually understand, there's just a lot more. There's just so much more to be understood there about the physical universe as we experience it. But we're okay with there being unknowns that are continually, it's like the question that Matt asked earlier about, is there a rock shaped like my head out there? And he, right now, I do not have the instruments to travel to a planet and observe whether or not that planet has a rock that's shaped like my head. There was a point in time where people would look at the moon and think, what do you think the moon's made of? And could have a hypothesis of, could the moon be made out of Swiss cheese? It kind of looks like it's got holes in it, but then you go up there, you reach the point in time where you actually have instruments to go up and gather samples from the moon, and you can actually have substantive data about that. So just because something is unknown doesn't mean it's always going to be unknown. We're okay with having unknowns. You're saying in order to engage with this conversation, we need to agree that we have a very, very specific idea of what the universe is, what existence is, and we need to be at the same level of certainty that you are about intelligent design. But we don't come to the conversation from that position.
I agree with everything you said, but that's, again, if we're looking at things in the naturalistic way. I mean, we can't explain the supernatural through naturalistic mechanisms, right? I can't empirically
But you're the one
go
who
in the
said,
lab.
but you are the one who said that the supernatural claim is logical. So you're the one who's positing that the supernatural claim can be demonstrated logically. So it is on
Absolutely.
you in this call to but you just said it can't be. You just said it can't be. So either
So is logic
demonstrate
empirical
either
evidence?
demonstrate to us how.
Did you just ask?
Either
did you just
demonstrate
ask
to
if
us.
logic
Yeah.
was empirical evidence?
Is it? I'm asking you. Is it empirical naturalistic evidence? Is that logic to you?
Right.
I mean, I'm not. I'm trying to understand this.
Okay. If you don't know the difference between logic and empirical evidence, we're kind of stuck. See, you're saying you went to ask whether the universe is finite or infinite. When I listen to, for example, experts on this subject like Brian Cox, they don't reach a conclusion. And I haven't reached a conclusion because I don't have any expertise and I don't have any evidence showing what the answer is going to be. But you are claiming that you have reached a conclusion based on evidence that the universe is finite, and that because of that, you can also make assertions that there is something supernatural and that you're going to call it God. All of these things are logically flawed. They are fallacious arguments that you're beginning with an assumption about the universe that hasn't been demonstrated, and then going on to stack on your personal incredulity. Where is the evidence that the universe is finite or infinite?
If you're asking, and again, that's why I keep asking, what is evidence to you? Like, what kind of evidence is sufficient?
David, please stop asking me what is evidence. First of all, I have a video coming out specifically describing evidence for it, but I've answered this question about 1 billion times. It does not matter what I consider evidence. You're the one who's claiming you have evidence. We want you to fucking present it, and then we can tell you whether or not what you're calling evidence is in fact evidence for your claim from our perspective, or is in fact a logically flawed conclusion about this. It doesn't matter in advance what Austin thinks counts as evidence or what I think counts as evidence. Unlike you, we tend to look at claims and evaluate them based on an existing body of facts in the universe, and with respect to whether or not there's any demonstrated likelihood or possibility or probability of those. So instead of asking us what we will count as evidence, tell us what convinced you, and then we can potentially have a discussion where either you show us how we're wrong about evidence or we show you how you're wrong about evidence. I don't understand why this is so difficult, but I'm exhausted from you dodging straight up questions while trying to pretend that Matt just doesn't like the concept of God, and so he's going to shoot everything down. First of all, fuck you. Second of all, I'm the one with the demonstrated expertise over this over 20 fucking years, who was a believer who stopped believing because I began to understood the nature of logic and evidence, and that I didn't have good reasons for my belief. So instead of sitting here doing a terrible job defending your proposition while also repeatedly trying to attack our secret inner motives, present your reason for believing in a God or go away. Your turn.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, if you want naturalistic empirical evidence, I don't have that, right? That's why I said it's logical. I'm saying,
David, I didn't ask you if you had naturalistic empirical evidence. I asked you to present your evidence. And then we would tell you whether or not we would count it or not. You cannot listen to a single question we've ever asked and answer that question. You have some script in your head about how you think this is going to go. Let me ask you this question. How's it going for you so far?
I don't understand the question.
Exactly. You haven't understood a single fucking question, and yet you've presented absolutely no argument or evidence for why the existence of a creator is logical. All you've done is assert that because you think the universe is finite, it must have had a beginning. And because you don't accept things like the multiverse and you don't know what other possibilities there are, you've decided that it's supernatural and God. Well, congratulations. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, I was saying to Matt. No, you're still here. I was saying to Matt before the show that I got a question exactly like what you. No, you're still here. But I got a question exactly like what you just asked on the internet the other day from another theist who said, well, what evidence would you accept? And that's what you've asked several times on this show. Like, what evidence would you accept? And I think that something that both of us would be interested in is, can we just start with any at all? Do you so far we've been talking to you for about 15 minutes, and the reason why you came onto the show was to present an argument as to why intelligent design is logical. And so far you haven't been able to express why that is. You've been trying to set up a parameter of like, okay, well, what do you guys think logic is? What do you think evidence is? But it's like, how about you just present your argument first? And then we can have the conversation about whether your argument seems to track logically or seems to be something that would track as evidence of a claim like the one that you're making. Why don't you actually just present us with the argument? That's what I'm interested in. Can you present us with the argument as to why belief in intelligent design is logical? That was the claim you made. Can you just start with something like that?
Sure. Again, it goes back to the origins of the universe, right? And if our universe is finite, meaning that, what's funny about that? I don't understand.
It's just funny. You just. I mean, okay, but no, I'm gonna let you say. I want you to elucidate the whole thing. I want to interrupt. I want to hear the whole thing.
Okay. So again, it goes back to the origins of the universe, right? In giving the concept that I personally believe and what current science is showing, that our universe is finite, meaning it had an origin or it will have an ending. Then you can't accept that this universe was always here because it's finite, right? So that's a logical fallacy. Secondly, if this universe wasn't always here, then, if you believe in the multiverse, we spawned from another universe and you have to always come to a conclusion that something always has to be here, right? And either you accept that was a creator, an uncaused cause, something that was always there, or you accept the universe was always here. I mean, I feel like there's no other option. If there's a third option, please present it and let me know.
Okay.
And
excellent.
From there,
not all your fallacies after Austin's done, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Finish what that thought, David.
Okay. So yeah. So and so from there, if you could deduce the fact logically that okay, something always has to be here. Either it was a universe or it was an uncaused cause, a creator, a supreme being that brought everything else into existence, then we could start talking about religions. I mean, talking about religions and talking about scripture is all secondary to the fact that whether you could come to a logical conclusion that a creator or an uncaused cause, a starting point, something that was independent of everything that came into existence was always there, right? So that's kind
so
of
we don't actually. I'll tell you something, David. We don't actually even need to get into talking about religions and specific dogmas or anything like that, because the fundamental premise of the argument that you just presented to us kind of undoes the entire thing. So what you start with, as I heard you, what you start with is that you have a specific belief about the finite nature of the universe, that you are making a choice to believe that the universe is finite, and starting with that premise, starting with that belief that is non-negotiable for you, that you are going to be certain of, you're going to then reverse engineer a logical argument as to the finite nature of this universe. That's the whole. So the whole thing is based on something that you are presupposing. That's the problem. Is you cannot start trying to prove a hypothesis with a presupposed conclusion. You can't say, well, I'm starting with the knowledge that uh you know, so and so committed this murder. I'm gonna go with that belief, and then I'm going to reverse engineer evidence to support that conclusion. Our justice system does do that sometimes. They try to reverse engineer puzzle pieces and pin them on people who actually may be innocent, and that's a problem. But you can't actually logically prove something that way. You have to start with you know, a blank slate. You can have a hypothesis. You can say, here's what I hypothesize about the universe, but I'm going to allow the universe or the evidence that I observe to direct my conclusion. Your problem is fundamentally you're starting with the conclusion and then you're going, how do I work a story? How do I weave a story that makes this conclusion that I'm starting with make sense? And the conclusion that you're starting with, you have no basis for. You have no way to empirically demonstrate that the universe is indeed finite. And according to you, your words were, I believe that it is. I have a belief that it is. So you're starting with this belief that you're not willing to negotiate on, that you're not willing to part with, and you're saying, I will reverse engineer my logical rationale for this belief. And that is, we don't even need to get further than that. The problem with it is you're starting with a foregone conclusion that cannot be demonstrated. And if you can't demonstrate why you know that the universe is finite, then none of the rest of your argument matters.
Well, current modern science argues that it did, right? Yeah, no, it does make sense. But I'm just saying current modern science, what we know right now, that the universe is going to have an ending or it had a beginning. If you believe the Big Bang wasn't the beginning and it was always there, the singularity was always there, and it caused everything else.
We don't actually know that what we are observing, what we've seen with telescopes and what we've been doing with, we don't actually know that that is the only space available in all of the continuum of quantum space. We don't, Matt mentioned earlier, multiverse theory. We don't actually know what the fuck's going on in black holes. We have an idea of what they're doing mathematically with gravity and the speed at which things get pulled into them like light, but we don't actually know what happens when you go inside of one. And so there's all these different things in the physical universe that we can observe that we're like, hey, we don't know if there are other universes that are constantly being expanded and contracted. We don't actually know what the process is. So just because we can mathematically track the Big Bang doesn't mean that we can mathematically determine that the universe had a definitive beginning point and that it will have an end and that it is indeed finite. That's not what that means.
Yeah, so that just goes back to my same argument, which is what is evidence, right? What is evidence to you? And it's important because I wouldn't call it evidence, but the kind of logical continuum that I'm presenting doesn't have any physical evidence that I could provide, right? I can't physically go and determine whether or not
and that's the entire problem with your entire premise is you're starting with a belief. You said, I believe the universe is finite. And starting from that point, the way that I work out a finite universe that had a beginning and that grew and that was built is I assign this creative designer narrative to it. And I like the way that it fits in. But you're starting with a premise that you admit there's no way for you to demonstrate with evidence, and that it requires you to just believe in it. So essentially your argument becomes, I believe because I believe. And that's the kind of reductive version of your argument is, I believe because I started with the belief and then I reverse engineered my rationale for that belief.
Well, I mean, it's, I don't agree with that. I don't believe just because I believe. Again, I'm just using my faculties, my ration and my reasoning.
I'm sorry, that's literally what you said. That's literally what you said word for word. When you began, you said it begins with the origin of the universe. And if the universe is finite, which I personally believe, I take really good notes and I wrote it down word for word. So you don't get to disagree about whether or not you asserted that the reason is because you personally believe.
Well, I'm just saying current modern science tells us that either
it doesn't.
Our universe is finite.
No, it doesn't. No, it fucking doesn't.
So
And
the,
if it was, shut up. If it were the case that science told us the universe was finite, then you wouldn't have had to say it's what you personally believe. You would have cited the science. Unfortunately, I've studied the science, and the experts in this area, people like Brian Cox, will not say, make a declarative about this because they understand the limits. Your problem, among many, is that you don't understand what a logical fallacy is because you falsely asserted what one was earlier. And you don't understand that sometimes the answer is, I don't know. For you, that's a conversation stopper, but it's not a conversation stopper because it's what it's doing is it's stopping your unfounded assertions, your terrified response to what if I don't know? Sometimes I don't know is the correct answer. How much money do I have in my wallet right now? Do you know?
$1 million, hopefully.
Well, you clearly don't know. And you clearly are still incapable of honestly answering a question for the purposes of exposing your irrationality. First of all, even if our universe had a beginning, the notion that there might be something like a meta universe, a multi universe of some type that might have always existed is exactly what you're proposing. It's just that you're choosing to call it a supernatural God that always existed. And there's no way for anybody to explore the existence or the beginning to the point to make a determination. And so you're just saying, I think it has to be this. And we're saying we don't.
And I agree with everything you just said. But again, the
First time
reason
you've
that,
been right all
so
day.
if you, well, I agree with, yeah, what you just explained right now. But again, the reason why I would say that's an uncaused cause or creator is because it makes logical sense through the different religions that claim to have connections to that
Hey,
creator, right?
I'm sorry.
So if
I'm
you
sorry.
explore
I'm
religion,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, David. Didn't you say it was useless to talk about religions? Why is it that after we expose the logical fallacies and flawed reasoning at the beginning of your argument, when you're now cornered, you're the one who goes to religion? Neither of us went to religion at all. As a matter of fact, Austin even said, we don't need to go anywhere near that. But when cornered, your brain shuts down its ability to reason effectively. And now you're flailing about like a wounded dragon trying to cite religion.
no, I'm just saying that the reason I'm
Yes,
going to
yes.
religion is because that is going to be the connection that for why
You don't
I
get to
believe
do
that
that.
a creator
You
was
don't,
there instead of
yeah,
the
yes,
universe always being there.
Dave, you don't get to do that, and you admitted it earlier.
What did I admit? I'm not understanding what.
That we can't go to religion under your model until you demonstrate the first part. And now you're saying a critical element of you demonstrating the first part is to go to religion to show why that's why you're convinced of this.
Well, yeah, so again, either you believe a universe was always here or an uncaused cause, a creator was always here. And you said, well, what's the difference, right? And I'm telling
Well,
you the difference is if there is a creator, I believe that creator is communicated with us through some means. And there's a bunch of religions that claim to have.
I'm going to mute you now. This is a train wreck. This is a train wreck of a broken brain. A terribly broken brain. Your mind has been poisoned by religious concepts. All of these. So you just went from, hey, if there is an uncaused creator, then I think it has communicated with us. First of all, if in fact there is some uncaused cause as a foundational thing, whether it's some version of this universe, some version of a multiverse generator, some version of a God, we have no way of exploring that. We have no way of determining which of those or several other possibilities are in fact correct. And yet you want to say that science has concluded this when it has not. And then you want to take that false position, as in not in that it is false, but it is false that that is the position of science, and then say, therefore, there must have been an uncaused cause. And I believe that that being, which you haven't demonstrated it's a being, communicated with us. And then you're going to go to the various religions that think or claim along those lines to say, see, this supports my nonsense from before. I'm sorry, but you don't know how to build an all-logical argument. You don't know what counts as evidence. You do not understand how thinking and reasoning work to reach conclusions effectively. I mean, every single time we've asked you a question, you've been confused or gone right back to your script. Every single time we point out a flaw, you want to just go on to the next thing, including things you already ruled out, like religion. Why on earth? What is your justification for thinking there is a creator who communicated with us? Go ahead.
I didn't hear your question because it beats me back.
Here's my
What is
question.
your,
You
what
said,
is your, what is your,
What is
yeah.
your what is your justification for thinking that some creator has communicated with us?
Well, there's various religions, right, that claim to have scriptures, claim to have some form of
And they all
communication
claim-
with this creator. Would you
and
agree
they
to
all
that
claim
premise or
different-
not?
Yeah, absolutely. And they all claim to have different things. They all claim that the creator has said very varying things that contradict each other. So why is that? How do you determine which of those organizations that says that they're communicating direct? I mean, I was raised in a church that claims to have a direct communication line with the creator of the universe. I was raised in the LDS church, and their claim is that their modern day prophet, who is currently Russell M. Nelson, has a direct line to God, actually speaks with him like you and I are speaking right now. And that is the truth claim made by that religion. I don't accept that truth claim. Do you think that Russell M. Nelson is talking directly to God?
I've never heard of that. Do they have a scripture, or is there some kind of form of evidence
It's
they
called
have
the Book of Mormon.
with communication? Oh, the Book of Mormon.
I mean,
I've looked through. Yeah.
And do you believe that Russell M. Nelson right now is directly communicating with the creator of the universe?
I haven't substantiated any evidence from that specific. I've read the parts of the Book of Mormon. I wasn't convinced by it.
Your claim is that
just the claims from the text, right? If they have a scripture or whatever, I mean, you look at the claims in the text. I mean, are these claims reasonable, or are they, proven wrong? Have they been proven wrong? I mean, something as simple as the Bible, and I know you guys bash the Bible all the time.
Well, no,
I don't believe that was
prove it wrong,
preserved.
though. You said we can't prove it wrong. We can't do studies about supernatural things. So anybody can claim anything in a book. And like you said, you look at the text, look at the claims. There's an entire section of the Doctrine and Covenants and Joseph Smith's history that he wrote down himself, where he claims to talk directly with angels, with Jesus Christ and God the Father, in the woods behind his house in Palmyra, New York, when he was 14 years old. He makes a very, very specific claim about having a face-to-face conversation, multiple face-to-face conversations with celestial beings. And enough people believed in this that they were willing to throw their entire lives into this organization. It was powerful enough of a story that this organization has spread across the entire world. There are millions of members in countries all across the world reading the Book of Mormon in all different languages from the story that this guy wrote down. And so you're saying the way that you verify it is, what were the claims written down in the text? I'm telling you this is the claim, and I'm saying, do you accept those truth claims, the truth claims of the LDS Church?
I haven't investigated them to accept them or not accept them. But let me ask you, why do you reject them? Because you seem to reject them.
Because did you hear the story that I just told you?
He ignored it because it's not part of his fucking script.
Absolutely not. No, I'm not ignoring anything. I'm just asking you. You've been in this
David,
church.
you said
studied it. I would assume.
It doesn't matter why Austin rejected it.
What you said is that you look at the truth claims made, and that you said you go to the text, you look at the truth claims made about the communications in the text. Then you tried to go to the Bible, and I was like, no, I don't want to talk about the Bible. I want to talk about a book you don't know about, because I would venture a guess to say that Matt probably knows more about the Bible than you do too. But I want to talk about another religious text, because if you're reasoning that you can prove God has communicated with human beings, the creator of the universe has communicated with human beings, is religious texts that make those claims. My point is, how do you pick one over the other? When all of these different organizations are making different claims that contradict each other, how do you determine which of those claims has the most truth to it, is the most veracious?
Well, again, you just look at what are the arguments set forth in that scripture, right? And I believe that there's been many scriptures that are that have been like the Bible, for instance, that's been corrupted and man written. I mean, I've looked at the fact that, the Gospels weren't written by, Matt, Luke, Matthew, like those guys weren't the actual writers of we don't even know who the original writers of the Gospels were. So, I mean, something like that, you could see that there is, what's that?
I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying, yeah. So why would you take that as evidence of anything?
So I don't take the Bible as a preserved word of a communication with the Creator at all. So, I mean, you talked about the Book of Mormon. I haven't investigated. I've investigated other scriptures, but I haven't investigated the Book of Mormon, and that's why I asked you.
What scripture do you accept as evidence of man's communication with the Creator of the universe?
I mean, I would, at this point, I would, in a politely kind of reject my claim or at least communicating that right now, because we haven't gotten over the hump that whether or not a creator exists. So whatever scripture I follow doesn't matter. But I've looked. The point I brought up the Bible is because Well, no, it doesn't, because if you don't accept the creator, what's the point of accepting the scripture or that communication line with that creator?
Because you made a very specific claim, Dave. You made a claim where you said that you've determined that the creator of the universe has communicated with human beings because of texts that make those truth claims, that there are scriptural texts from different religions that make those truth claims. So I'm asking you which texts, because my whole point in walking you down the line of the Mormonism text is to say, it's probably reasonable to say that you are not currently a believer in the truth claims of the LDS Church. And my point is just like, why? How do you pick one text over the other? How do you determine which text is more veracious than others? What is your standard of, believability when it comes to which religious texts you're throwing your lot in with?
Oh, so again, it goes back to the origins of the universe. So if you accept the premise that there is a creator, no, seriously, I'll answer his question. But I'm saying, if
no, you're not. You're not answering his question. Every fucking time we ask you a question, you say, "Shut up." Every time we ask you a question, it goes back to the origins of the universe, which we already know you have no way of knowing anything at all about.
Well, if you accept that this universe is finite, then
if
you
have
accept
to there's a fucking God, then there's a God. If you accept that my fucking butt
I believe because I believe
reasoned arguments, then I can shit reasoned arguments. You don't get to say if then and declare you've done all your work. The if is incredibly fucking huge.
As why I'm starting with the premise that the universe is finite. So what was before the universe?
Right. But we've already been through this, David. We already said that's the fundamental problem of your entire reasoning is you are starting with the premise, and you can't start with that premise. There's no logical. Your call was belief in God is logical. There is no logical reason to begin with the premise that the universe is definitely, indeed, certainly finite, and then reverse engineer your rationale behind that premise. There's no logical reason to do that. We've already been through this.
Well, again, I mean, the basic science is telling us at this point that there was an origin, meaning the Big Bang, the singularity started everything.
No, it's not. No, it's fucking not. Stop saying what basic science is telling you. Instead of saying basic science, go for some fucking advanced science, because you don't understand the basics of anything.
Again, so the point is that something has to always be there, and I personally believe that it was a creator, not a universe. I don't believe the universe was always here.
I don't care what you personally believe. I don't care what you personally believe. We need to know whether or not it is rationally justified. And all you're doing is repeatedly demonstrating that you don't even know what rational justification is, let alone having it.
I think it is rational. I think it's very rational to believe that there was an uncaused cause, something that was independent of everything else. I mean, everything that we know to be in existence is dependent.
I give up. I don't need you to keep reasserting what you believe. I need you to make a reasonable case for it. I don't need you to say you think it's reasonable. I don't give a fuck whether you think it's reasonable. You don't understand the basics of reason. You don't understand logic. We've proven it over and over again.
I mean, you think it's reasonable to believe that we evolved from a single cell organism. I think that's
Okay, I'm going to mute you and you're going to listen and you're not going to get to speak one more fucking time this entire show. Whether or not I hate God or the concept of God is irrelevant, but you went to that. And now you're saying, you think it's reasonable to believe that we evolved from a once. I didn't say anything at all about evolution or abiogenesis. But yes, in fact, I think the evidence shows and demonstrates that the most reasonable conclusion is this, because I can point to mountains of evidence. We know about chromosomes. We know about the merging of chromosomes. We know that we share a fused chromosome with the other great apes. But whether or not I believe in evolution is absolutely irrelevant to whether or not you can demonstrate that you understand even the basics of reasoning. In fact, you coming after me and my personal beliefs more than once to suggest that I'm the unreasonable one demonstrates that you don't know how to make an argument that isn't fallacious, in this case, an ad hominem. Because what I believe about evolution is irrelevant to whether or not you understand reason. All of this has been recorded. You do not understand the basics of reason. You do not understand the nature of evidence. You have not presented anything stronger than you think science has shown that the universe had a beginning, which is not the case. You think, if that's true, that a creator God being is more reasonable. That is an unsupported conclusion reached from that. And you are basing that on the fact that you personally think that God communicated with us, of which you can make zero demonstration. All you can do is say there's a whole bunch of books out there where people think that. Yes. And Trump said this is Biden's economy. And OJ said he didn't kill Nicole. People make all kinds of claims, some of which are absolutely obviously false based on the wealth of evidence outside of those claims, because we have to view these claims within the context of the world. You, David, do not have an understanding of reason. You do not have an understanding of evidence. And you simply asserting that you find something reasonable does us no good at all. We need something that we can actually discuss. If all you can do is say, well, I'm convinced and I think it's reasonable, well, good job, David. And if all you can do to support that afterwards is be like, well, you believe in the best supported scientific model in the history of the world. Yes, I do. I am happy to accept the foundations of biology and an understanding of reality. I would
I'm
give
happy.
you, actually, I said you wouldn't talk again, but I don't, I'm going to retract that.
Okay.
What are your thoughts now, David?
I mean, I think everything you said is reasonable, right? You came to a conclusion that is reasonable.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. I don't care what you find reasonable. Don't address it again. If what I just said is reasonable, then you seem to be admitting that there is a reasonable case that you don't understand the basics of reason. Do you at least get that that's what you just said?
Well, no. I mean, everybody has their own rations and logic or logical conclusions.
No. You said what I said was reasonable. That means you are admitting that you think it's reasonable for me to conclude that you don't understand reason. Are you aware that that's what you just did? Yes or no?
Belief, right? That's your personal belief. You can believe whatever you want.
No, David. When you stop talking, you're muted. Nobody can hear you. Listen very carefully. When you say that you are convinced that what I said is reasonable, it ceases to be something that you can dismiss as just just Matt's opinion. Oh, well, everybody has their own thing. Of course you did. You said what I said was fucking reasonable, and I said that it was reasonable to conclude that you were unreasonable. Are you aware of what that means?
No, just because I say something is reasonable doesn't mean I accept it for truth.
Wow. Okay.
I think it's sort of a
I'm completely
rhetorical,
bowing out.
yeah.
It's entirely up to you. I don't want to
I,
steal it.
I think it's a rhetorical argumentative device that I see a lot from people who don't want to actually just go, you know what, I might be bested here. They'll sort of just kind of loosely say, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. But then they'll move on to their next talking point in their script. And it's like, hold on. If you agree with what Matt just said, what Matt is saying is that the entire basis of how you work out your rationale for your worldview is built on a fallacious platform. That you start with premises that you have no evidential way of knowing, that you start with assertions that you have no way of demonstrating. And this is you saying this over and over and over again. I have no way of demonstrating supernatural claims. There's no way to provide evidence for supernatural claims. However, I'm going to make the claim that the universe definitely is finite, and I'm going to work from that framework, and then I'm going to reverse engineer my justification for that. Matt's pointing out that then your entire basis for how you work out your rationale is fallacious. You say, yeah, that's reasonable. That makes sense to me. It means that you're agreeing that you have a fallacious process for working out your own rationale. I will say, though, I am excited about a couple things because, when it comes to evidence and holy texts and stuff, I talked at the beginning of the episode about how I've been writing down prophecies. This one was a caller will call into the validity of evolution by either misunderstanding the scientific definition of theory or by citing missing information. I'm going to throw that in with when you said, that our belief in the theory of evolution is just as absurd as your belief in intelligent design. And then I also really like this one too. I think that this has been what we've been doing from the beginning. A caller will point to the divine complexity of the universe as evidence of intelligent design. That you work with the premise that the universe is finite, and then you look at the complexity of the design of the universe and you reverse engine and you go, well, all these stories that have been told in all of these texts, I think that those fit nicely with what I see. And I don't know, right now, I'm feeling pretty good about my prophet skills. So I might build a book and yeah.
Okay. I'm taking David off mute. David, before you say anything, just listen. I only have one question for you. Why do you claim to disagree with something that you claim is reasonable?
Why do I claim to disagree with something that I claim is reasonable? Well, it's my belief. I don't believe the thought process that I'm coming to, my conclusion is unreasonable. But I could see through your perspective why you would claim that my reasoning is unreasonable. That's
sorry,
my answer to that.
You've just demonstrated that you don't understand reason, because if you look at what I said and say it's reasonable, but you don't accept it, then you are claiming there's something wrong with it. Otherwise, you are claiming that you will not accept reasonable arguments. And so you're saying, oh, well, I can see how you could think that. That doesn't make something reasonable. I can completely see how you can reach unreasonable conclusions because you don't understand reason. I would never say that your case was reasonable just because I understand that you have been confused and confused yourself into accepting unreasonable things. You said that what I said was reasonable, which means either you don't understand reason or you are unwilling to accept that which is reasonable. Which one is it?
I mean, I don't know what kind of conversation we're getting into now. I mean,
I do. You have painted yourself into a corner where you either have to admit that you will not accept things that are reasonable, or you do not know how to identify that which is reasonable. Which one of those is the case?
I mean, again, I'm just saying, I don't know what.
I'm sorry. Every time you say again, I'm going to mute you because I don't need you to repeat anything. I need you to answer the new question. If you're going to act like you're 5, I'm going to treat you like you're 5. Is it the case that you do not understand what is reasonable, or that you are unwilling to accept that which you find reasonable? One of those has to be true. Which one is it?
No, I would say neither of those.
I'm sorry, but if you say you're unwilling to accept that which you find reasonable, which is what you've already said, then you are either unwilling to accept that which you find reasonable, or you have not actually found it reasonable and then don't know what reasonable is. Which one of those is true?
Okay, so like I explained that.
Never mind. Like I explained is just another way to say again, and so I have hung up on you.
Yeah, I also love that he said, "I just don't believe that my way of developing my rationale for my worldview is fallacious. I don't believe that it is." And again, that goes back to I believe because I believe. Everything in that entire call was I believe because I believe. I start with belief. I start with the belief that the universe is finite. I start with really starting with the belief that the universe, I do accept the story that there was an intelligent designer and a creator, and then I start to work my rationale and my worldview around those presupposed beliefs, those already accepted beliefs. But that's that whole thing. It's like explaining why it's fallacious to start with that premise and then go, well, I don't believe that it is fallacious. That's not how logical. Your whole call was, I'm going to prove why believing in God is logical. That's not how logic works. You don't get to say, I believe that 2 + 2 is 5. I don't believe that I'm wrong when I say 2 + 2 is 5. I don't believe that. Okay, well, you are wrong. It doesn't matter what you believe. Doesn't matter.
Let's hit a
But that
reset
whole,
button.
yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry.
cool.
I thought, um,
No, I'm done.
so I like to make sure that I'm not carrying over irritation and treating the next person with disrespect from the outset.
Right.
But when we start these calls, and like we did with David, it was, hey, tell us what you believe and why. And then when we reach some sort of impasse, we need to have a discussion. And in this case, the entire discussion centered around reason, no matter how many times he demonstrated he didn't understand it, right up to saying, oh, that's reasonable, but I don't accept it. See, this is the thing. When you present a valid and sound logical argument, a syllogism, valid means that the structure is such that true premises necessarily lead to true conclusions. And if you don't understand that, you need to go off and like take Logic 101, read up the Wikipedia article on the difference between validity and soundness. Soundness is about whether or not the premises of the argument are actually true, or, and this is more accurate, but it irritates some people, whether or not you accept the premises, because we may not have access to truth. But if you and I agree that all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, and we put those together in a valid syllogism and reach the conclusion that therefore Socrates is mortal, it doesn't matter whether those premises are true. We are being reasonable if we've accepted them as true, and unreasonable if we accept them as true and reject the conclusion. If the premises are true, if you think the premises are true in a valid structure, you must accept the conclusion. And if you don't, you need to come up with a reason why. Either the argument's invalid in structure, or you in fact reject one of the premises. What he and others were trying to do is suggest that, ooh, I think that might be valid, and I think those are sound, but I don't accept the conclusion. And that's a problem. That is when you are being unreasonable. This isn't about truth or whether or not we can get to truth.
Well, and also I think that what he thought he was doing is exactly what you're saying, which is, we have to accept the premises as true, that all men are mortal. We have to accept this premise as true. I think that that's what he was saying, is we have to accept the premise of the universe is either finite or infinite. And we have to accept that premise. And he chooses to accept the premise that it is finite, and starting from that place. And we were saying from the outset, we don't agree to
Right.
the parameters of the premise. And that was the kind of fundamental impasse, and also demonstrating why we can't agree to the parameters of the premise. Because if you had a premise like all men are mortal, but we had people who had never died, we had people who had been alive since, the dawn of Homo sapiens, and like or hundreds of them, we'd go, I don't know, we got a handful of us who have never died. So we can't actually accept the premise that all people can die. We seem to have amongst us observable immortals, then we would have a discrepancy on being able to accept the validity of the premise. But
and it's also
that was
funny
our
when
problem.
somebody's like, ooh, the science says the universe is finite, when that's not a thing. And then they turn around and mock us for believing in the science of evolution. Something that, I mean, this is the cornerstone of all of biology. And even if we were to find out that our current model of the nuts and bolts of how evolution by means of natural selection works is in fact incorrect, it is limited in how incorrect it can be given the available evidence. It's like saying, oh, we found a dead body, we investigated the evidence, and we found out, and it led us to this conclusion that the butler did it. And then we find out later, oh, here's something that shows the butler didn't do it. That evidence that pointed to the butler still exists and is good. And therefore, it has already narrowed the scope to where, okay, the butler didn't do it, but it definitely shows that it was a human being narrowing the scope, or it was, that it was an introduced toxin. And, anyway.
Hi, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, or if you think you have better arguments for the supernatural or God, the Sunday show is live at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. every Sunday on The Line. Links below.